Today we're going to be talking about who these paints are made for and my final thoughts on them. This is my third video exploring gouache as a watercolor artist and the last I'll make on the subject. And I'm going to be perfectly clear. Artist Loft doesn't really make materials that are suited towards professional artists. So who would I recommend these paints to? First, I would recommend them to anyone who has students at home who you don't want to be messing up your house with things that don't wash out like acrylic, because these are a water-based paint. You can wash them off of anything. There might be some staining, but it's not going to dry on like a plastic paint would. I would also recommend them for anyone who has small children who you like to sit down and paint with. And again, it's mostly because of their washable quality, but also because these are a huge step up from a lot of other paint products out there that are geared towards smaller children. Yes, you might be paying a little bit more for something like this, but I saw firsthand how amazing these paints are in the hands of small children and the amount of joy that this paint brings to them. These are also a really good paint to get into color theory and mixing. I feel like the wide spectrum of colors you're given can be a hindrance to learning color theory, but again, the price mixed with the quantity of paint that you've received, it really allows for a person to feel like they can play and they can mix without having the feeling that they're wasting their paint. And if all you're hearing right now is students should use these paints, you're not wrong. I am really pushing the fact that these are really good paints for anyone who wants to learn about painting in general. So what is the appeal to anyone who is maybe more skilled than a complete beginner? It's incredibly accessible. It's a good price point, you get a fair amount of paints, and you don't clam up over wasting paint because it is a good price point. And I'm going to be quite frank, even with supposedly inferior products, a good artist can still make good art. So even though these might not be the most pigmented gouache paints out there, they are still usable for anyone who knows how to use them. My final opinion on these paints is that they're a very usable paint. They are not the best, they are not the worst, and they get the job done. They will dry out if you leave the lid open, but you can always re-wet them like I just showed. And if you don't use them, they mold, which to me is the biggest downfall of these paints. Because I use so many different mediums in the work I do, sometimes I just don't use the product. So it might be actually a good thing if you let the paints dry out a bit to maybe prevent the mold from growing. Honestly, I cleaned it up I scraped the mold off of the 2 cups it was. So chances are I should skip doing this whole cup thing and go straight to buying tubes of gouache. So that doesn't happen. I moved a lot of my more used colors onto a palette I had, and this is what it looks like dried. I don't mind using them like this, it works just fine. It just ends up making the paint a little bit thinner. Now, these are my completed gouache paintings as of posting and making this video. The ones I'm holding on to right now are my second and third painting I had ever done in this medium, and I just want to share my thoughts a little bit about them. So gouache dries flat. It's supposed to have this flat, matte look to it, and it looks quite lovely, but it also looks kind of dull. So I tried doing an underpainting, which you saw me doing earlier in this video, and the underpainting just really makes the painting sing. Of all the things I painted with this, I really enjoyed the still lifes the most. And this is done on Fabriano paper, by the way, which is 20% cotton and the rest is pulp. It's a student brand paper, and it held up very well to this. This is a study I did of an artist I found online. I like doing studies, they're fun, and I get to think about how other people created things The original one was done in acrylic, and I wanted to try my hand at mixing in gouache. This is another found on the internet picture that I copied just to get a feel for it. I treated this a lot more like watercolor than anything else, and I really liked that I could build up the layers of darkness. You can see the blooming that it did. Again, this is on Fabriano paper. This is an incomplete drawing, but this is on Arches cold press. I liked how it moved on this paper. I like how I could layer it more. You can see I'm starting to add in the pipes here, and I'm slowly building up the opacity on this. I probably could go thicker quicker, but I like to build my layers up slowly, just like in watercolor. The Arches paper is definitely the choice to make. Going back to Fabriano paper, this, I really beat the crap out of it. I completely soaked the paper in water, and I was layering and scrubbing and just really putting it to the test for this painting. Also, I just needed something to have fun with. I like monsters. This one I did for Mother's Day. I don't really have much to say about this one. This one is actually on mixed media paper, toned mixed media paper, Strathmore. And it really wasn't that bad to layer on. I don't really have very many opinions on this paper, to be honest. I think it's fun that, I don't know, it worked, I guess. I think the paper took it really well, to be honest. And then this is probably my favorite painting I've done. I did a little bit of painting in my backyard, and the sun was setting, it was beautiful. I kind of did it all in the moment, and then finished it up in the morning, because of course I couldn't get all of this in one sitting. There was just not enough light. But that's not the point of this. The point is that this is on Arches paper, and it worked really good. So I guess if you were looking to get into gouache, I do honestly think that Artist Loft is a good jumping in point, but I personally will be buying tubes next. I don't need this many colors, and they don't give you enough light. How I'll be using these going forward is with my watercolor and using white gouache like this to make my opaque watercolors. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time.